I was asked to go work in a men's jail.
Oh, wow.
For the first time, were letting women work on the line in a men's jail. And so 4 of us were selected. And I spent the next 2 years working in a men's facility, which was really exposing me to male criminals, the criminal element that are men. Like I said, 4,200 square miles of the county. We have 9 of the 18 cities that we do law enforcement for, the 18 tribal reservations. We have 7 jails, the courthouse security, a number of regional responsibilities. So thankfully, after very difficult, what I felt was a campaign, I was elected in 2022 and took office about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. The gangs actively recruit younger members because not only, they need to, replenish their group, I guess, so to speak, or they are looking for younger kids because they're not going to be suspected of running the drugs or carrying the gun or those types of things. So unfortunately, and it's an attractive lifestyle. We need you if you're a victim or a witness of a crime to call us. We're the ones who are going to answer 911 and come help you.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly important. We can't solve crime. We can't save victims. We can't protect people if people aren't talking to us.
Yeah, don't be afraid to say something. Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Sheriff Kelly Martinez, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about the amazing things you're doing as the sheriff of one of the largest counties in the world. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks so much for featuring us. It's awesome.
Super excited for our time together. So where were you born?
I was born in San Diego, actually at the Naval Hospital. My parents came here from Omaha, Nebraska, and my dad, they're teenage parents, and my dad joined the Navy, and so they ended up here.
Wow. So you've been here your entire life?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome. So, So what was your favorite thing about growing up in the San Diego area?
I had 5 siblings, so pretty large family. There were 8 of us with my parents, and we lived in a pretty tiny house, this 800 square foot home until I was about 8 or 9 years old in Southeast San Diego, for anyone who's familiar with the area. And it was just a really connected little family. I mean, we all very, very close in age. My parents were young, as I said, and we just had a lot of fun. We didn't have money. I mean, we did the powdered milk and the government cheese, so to speak, and that kind of thing. But you don't notice that when you're a kid. It was just really fun.
Yeah, especially if a lot of times your parents help you not realize that. You know what I mean? They keep you busy, and you just don't.
Oh yeah.
You just don't pay attention to that kind of thing a lot of times.
Right.
So, who is the most influential person to you growing up?
Oh, my dad, for sure.
Okay.
We were very connected, very close relationship. He left the Navy because my mom, frankly, got tired of him being overseas and not being home helping with these 6 kids. And so he did some odd jobs and whatnot. He worked at a go-kart place for a little while. I remember he was a loss prevention guy at a store, and then eventually landed a job with San Diego Police Department and was a police officer here in San Diego. And he's just a great guy. Just really liked him a lot. He didn't guide me to go into law enforcement, but I certainly did look up to him.
Yeah, I so totally understand. In high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I really seemed to do well in English. I liked English. I took, of all things, I took Latin for 2 years. I was told
Does that
was
make you a glutton for punishment?
I think my mom loved Latin, so she encouraged me to take it, and I liked my teacher a lot. Didn't care for biology, but I had an amazing biology teacher who I really liked. So I was a pretty good student. I wasn't great, but I did enjoy school.
So here's the next question. You mentioned teachers. Did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
Yeah, for sure. Mr. Oliver, I still
Yeah.
remember his last name. He was just a really nice man, and he was the teacher in sciences that I had that I really looked up to and liked.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So after high school, where do you go?
So I got out of high school, and the plan was to go to college, but I didn't really like. I went to Palomar Junior College, Community College. Yeah, you too. Yeah, was there for a year, but was not such a good student. Didn't really like it. So I had a friend who had moved to St. Simon's Island, Georgia, with a boyfriend. There's always boyfriends involved, right? And
Always.
she went there. He was in the Coast Guard, and anyway, uh, she encouraged me to come out and go there for a little bit. So I moved to St. Simon's Island, Georgia,
Mhm.
for a year. Was a waitress there, and didn't decided that I really needed to be back in San Diego. So I came back to San Diego after a year and waitressed here in San Diego. And then after a little while doing that, one of my dad's beat partners actually talked me into joining law enforcement.
Wow. How did he do that?
Well, they used to come in. I worked at the Denny's on Miramar Road, and I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
had to, yeah. So
Been
there,
there
and then I
too.
also, yeah. And then the butcher shop in Claremont Mesa was my second job because you can't make a living as a waitress just working one job.
Yeah.
And so I worked a night shift at the Denny's, and my dad and his squad would come in for coffee. And just over several conversations, they all really encouraged me to get a better job, do something else with my life. So uh, I put in for both San Diego Police Department and the sheriff's, and was hired by the sheriff's first.
So you get hired by the sheriff, you go to the academy. What's that like?
Well, my dad wasn't very excited for me to join law enforcement. He didn't think it was a job for girls. And it really, in those days, it really was a tough job for women.
Yeah.
And so he honestly, kind of famously stopped talking to me while I was in the academy, I think out of fear for what I was doing. And uh, so I just really pushed myself. It was hard. Get yelled at, I wasn't ever an athlete. So there's a lot of physical requirements that, but I've always been one to work hard, and didn't know about giving up. I didn't know you could quit or give up. So I just kept pushing through, and it was a great experience. In hindsight, I became very close with some of my academy mates, and to this day, I still keep in touch with some of them.
That's cool. So you graduate from the academy. Sheriffs go into the jail first, right?
Right.
Is that what you did?
So back in 1985, when I went through, all women went to the women's jail, and
Wow.
women weren't working in the men's jail at the time. So yeah, I went to Las Colinas, which was the old Las Colinas, which we now have a newer
Yeah.
women's facility. I went and worked there, and honestly, I loved it. I never looked back. I just loved every minute of the job, every single position I worked.
Do you mind if I ask you why you loved it? Because the idea of working in a jail, I'm going to be honest with you, for people that are listening to us that have never done it before,
Yeah.
might be a little intimidating. I mean, just the idea of going to the academy, right? And the idea behind this is, I know that just by doing what you do the way you do it, you encourage other women to get into law enforcement. I know for a fact you do, because
Yeah.
it's just how you roll. You know what I mean? And anybody who's followed you, and I have, cannot help but be proud of you and admire you for what you do every single day through your actions, just to encourage and be a role model. So do you mind talking about the jail thing? Because it had to have been somewhat intimidating, right?
It was interesting because after we moved out of Southeast San Diego, we moved to Poway, which for anyone who knows Poway, it's pretty middle class. Really not a lot of exposure to bad things in Poway, and growing up as a kid there, very wholesome kind of environment. So to say I was exposed to things in the jail that I'd never seen, kind of an understatement. But what I loved about it was the pace of it,
Yeah.
and seeing things that were different. We have right now we're doing tours of our jails for people who might be interested in the job, but we want to demystify it exactly like you're saying for women in particular. So we take people there and we have people apply right away as soon as they see it because it's very different than what people expect. I liked talking to people who got booked into custody. In particular, now we refer to them more appropriately as human trafficking victims, but at the time it was the prostitutes that would come in and hearing about their lives. And there were funny stories. There was one woman that I was fingerprinting in her name. She was being booked under the name Mercedes Benz. And I said, how'd you get that name? She goes, that's the car that was driving by when I got arrested. So that's what I told them. But I mean, just things like that and hearing about, just sort of understanding them and seeing, we had some people who came in, frankly, for horrific things, they did terrible things and you just never, we're there to do a job and keep people safe. We're not there to punish or those types of things. We need to get them to court and get their medical care and all those things. There was a lot of camaraderie with the deputies and then the people coming in, the arresting officers. And so there's that experience. It was just unique. It was very interesting to me, new. It's not really gritty like people expect. It's a clean environment where people are basically housed while they go through the justice system process. And just the stories were interesting. There's people that you're compelled to, you just really like them and you feel bad that they've made choices that put them in this situation. Then there's other people that you're grateful they're not out in our communities.
Yeah.
So, I've come to the conclusion after this many years, there's people who make mistakes.
Mhm.
And then there's also true evil in the world. So, you kind of differentiate between the two and you understand human nature a lot more once you go through that.
So, do you mind if we back up just a bit?
Sure.
So when we talk about working in a jail, you mentioned that giving these tours kind of helps to demystify things. Can you talk for just a second about sort of what people have in terms of their sort of I'm losing my word.
Preconceived, yeah.
No, yeah, there you go. Preconceived. That's what I'm trying to say. Preconceived notion. Like people are going to walk in there with a frame of reference, right?
Yeah.
How is it that you've experienced that those tours have helped to demystify?
Well, I think most people's exposure to a jail or a prison is what you see on TV.
Yeah.
And frankly, they paint it as very grim and ugly and sort of animalistic in the way people behave. And that's not really what's going on in the jails. Our women's facility looks like a college campus.
Yeah.
We have a lot of programs, reentry programs where we teach culinary arts and, we have baristas which are people who are in custody and they learn how to be baristas. And we have Moto Coffee is really the sponsor for that barista program. And they hire people when they get out of custody. There's mothers, people who are in jail or every relative that you would think of, mothers, daughters, aunts. And so there's families that come in to visit them, children come to visit them. They learn, some of them are going to school while they're there. It's a very large campus. It's, as I said, it's clean. The environment is just, I think, more normal than people expect. There are cells and things like that, but there's also some dormitory style housing and, we serve food and meals and it's outdoors, most of the campus. So it's just very different than people expect.
I can imagine it probably is. For you in particular, when you were in your mind thinking, I'm going to be working in a jail, when you first showed up the first day, what changed? What were your first things, like the first, I'd say top 3 things that you noticed that were completely different than what you expected?
Gosh, if I can remember that far back. It's a long time ago, Mike.
I know.
I think, I was I'm trying to think the smells maybe, because you put that many people into a housing unit,
Yeah.
everybody has different hygiene, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of diversity of people that are in custody. So I think what surprised me is sort of an exposure to cultures I didn't wasn't that familiar with. Like I
Right.
said, I grew up in Poway, which for the most part, that was sort of my frame of reference.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks were in custody that I would never have in my normal life been exposed to.
Yeah.
So
So
that was probably
Poway, for people that don't know, because we're literally listened to in 66
yeah,
countries, as I indicated to you, Poway is a is a suburb in it's its own town, but it's a suburb of San Diego. It's just north of San Diego, and it's kind of a country feel. It has
yeah,
it has one of the best public school districts in the world. There are people that literally come from all around the world to bring their kids here to go to school there. There's a lot of there's horses there. There's horse trails there. I mean, there's a lot. It's really a kind of a country feel. And so for people that aren't familiar with it, it's really a sort of a non-urban type environment.
yeah. And some
What
of
people think of as an urban environment.
yeah, and people who a lot of times people go to jail who are drug users and have
Yeah.
substance use issues, and a lot of family dysfunction and things like that. So, and women in particular, typically who enter the justice system have been victims themselves
Yeah.
for a long time. So there's a lot of trauma going on and things like that. So all that was something new to me. But after a year continuing with my jail career, I was asked to go work in a men's jail. They,
Oh, wow.
for the first time, were letting women work on the line in a men's jail. And so 4 of us were selected. And I spent the next 2 years working in a men's facility, which was really exposing me to male criminals, the criminal element that are men. And then also I was working with male deputies for the
Right.
first time, because at the women's jail, it was all women deputies. So
Mhm.
it really kind of set the tone for the rest of my career. I think it gave me a platform and a foundation that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
So it gives you a feel for how men versus women, male versus female deputies, right? Look at the
Yeah.
world, look at the jail, look at what it is that they're doing. And that diversity had to help. It had to help to be able to communicate both, with both groups.
Yeah, and it really was huge. And I think it helped my reputation as a deputy in the department because I had that background now, right? I'd worked
Mhm.
in a men's facility. I wasn't just another female coming from the women's jail and that kind of stuff. So when I went to a patrol assignment, actually, I was selected for the patrol assignment. I got partly because of the connections I'd made in the men's facility.
So
So,
when you moved from the female facility to the male facility, what was the single biggest difference? Like, what was the thing that sort of, when you got there, it sort of went, wow.
yeah. So men typically are more involved in aggressive actions and things like that, gang activity, stuff like that. So I was exposed to sort of a difference in the types of the crime types that men commit versus women. And, it was pretty much a lower level facility with sentenced individuals. So, and it was it was in Descanso, which you're probably familiar with that, even more rural than Poway. So
More
it was,
non-urban.
yeah, very, very non-urban.
It is
But it
way out
actually
there.
snows. It's up in the mountains, and it actually
Yeah,
snows there. And
yeah, it
we would
really
have,
does.
yeah, we would have people in custody that had only come from the urban center, and
Yeah.
so they would walk around and just be mystified by the snow. It was kind of fun. But the other thing too, um, the incarcerated population, the men, they weren't used to seeing women in the facility. So I remember walking past one of the dorms, and there's no curtains or anything because there's no privacy in a jail. And 2 men were at the urinal, and one of them saw me, and he turned really quickly and ended up urinating on the guy next to him,
Oh my
which of
gosh.
course, which wasn't good for the guy who did that.
Not exactly. Not the one that was on the receiving end.
But just what, that's the kind of stuff that would happen that kind of made the days kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it was good.
So if somebody's listening to this, and whether they're female or male, right, but they're thinking about getting into law enforcement, what advice would you have for them if they're considering a career in law enforcement?
Well, I think talk to people who are doing the job,
Yeah.
and then the biggest issue that we come into with people going into the academy is they're not physically ready.
Yeah.
It's a very strenuous from day one. you're running stairs and you're running, you have to complete a mile in a certain time frame. You have to
Mhm.
be able to jump a wall and all of those things, push-ups, sit-ups, all the time, constantly crunches. And a lot of times people just aren't physically ready. I know we do it and some other agencies do. We have pre-academy workouts, so you
Oh,
can
cool.
start getting a taste for that and get in shape before the academy. The other thing too is you get yelled at, and a lot of people,
Mhm.
especially this, younger 20s age group, aren't used to that.
Yeah, they
And
haven't
it's
been
pretty in
yelled
your
at.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty in your face, and that there's a reason, because you're exposed to high levels of stress in this job, and
Mhm.
it's sort of teaching you how to manage that stress without, falling apart.
Right.
So it's a necessary part of the training, but it's very difficult for some people.
I interviewed a former Navy SEAL
Yeah.
for my podcast, and he was um, when I interviewed him, he was in Marin County, lived in Marin County his entire life, and he said, "By the way, I'm coming down to your neck of the woods in the next couple of weeks." I said, "You are?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "My son is going through buds." So his
Oh,
22-year-old son was going to Coronado to try to go
wow.
through buds, which is this really, really rough training regimen, right? That program that they have to make it through in order to become a Navy SEAL. And so he was coming down here to just kind of hang out and be here to support his son. And I asked him, I said, "So did your dad do that?" He goes, "Are you kidding me?" But, one of the things that he mentioned, because I asked him, I said, "So how did you make it through?" He said, "The thing that I realized," he said, "I got there and I hadn't been yelled at a lot in my life." And he said, "I got there and they were yelling at us and they were, doing all kinds of things to sort of ramp up the stress level, like you're talking about, to see how you react." And he said, "What I
Mhm.
realized that made me get through it was I started leaning and gravitating to my teammates. We
Yeah.
became a team." And he said part of the reason that they do that is they're forcing you to either become a member of the team or basically check yourself out, right? And they
Yeah.
know which ones they want. That's why they call them the teams, right? They
Yeah.
know they know. So, I mean, I know it sounds a little oversimplified, but that's exactly what they're doing is they're literally testing them. So when they come to your academy, and they're being yelled at, it's on purpose, right? So that they can
Yeah.
figure out a way to help them adjust to some pretty amazing things they're going to find in the field. Do you mind if I share a personal story with you?
No, not at all.
So I did a ride along. I was considering getting into law enforcement. I did a ride along with a buddy of mine that I lifted weights with at Oceanside PD. And we go out one night and there's a call at a bar on what used to be Hill Street. Hill Street's not there anymore, right? But it used to be Hill Street. You remember how wonderful that was. So we go to the back of the bar. There's some guy in there that's had too much to drink and he's raising a ruckus. And so we're there to basically take him away and keep everybody else safe, right? So we get there and we park in the back parking lot or back alley where there's no lights at all. I mean, it's dark as all get
Oh,
out. And so we go in the back door and we immediately identify who he is. They're all pointing to him. So we go over and this friend of mine brings him out. Well, the friend brings him out and he's, patting him down and got him in handcuffs and all this kind of stuff. And I'm standing on the other side of the cruiser and I end up getting in the passenger seat of the front seat of the car and we're driving him to the jail, right? The Vista County jail, your jail,
yeah.
right? So we're driving him to the jail, and behind the wire of the cage, he's telling me all these unbelievably horrible things he's going to do to me when he gets his hands on me. Okay, and I mean, we're talking about stuff that we can't talk about here. I mean, it was
Yeah.
bad, and it really it affected me in that I'm like, oh, this is the kind of stuff you guys deal with, and he's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is nothing, right? Right. So we get him to the jail, and the guys at it was all men at the time, but the men at the jail that were intake, they couldn't have been better. I mean, they were just awesome, right? And they immediately took control of the situation and got him in the facility and all this kind of stuff. And so we leave. So we go out the Sally Port and we leave. And the rest of the night we kind of talked about different things that he comes across. That was stressful. That conversation that I didn't have
Yeah.
with this guy, but he had with me was wow. This is why you have to have a tough exterior to do this. So I go home and I was up. I think we were third shift. So we got finished at, I want to say 8 in the morning. And I left and went home and I got a couple hours sleep. And then I went to work. Well, I go to work and I'm working at a grocery store, working my way through college, and I'm in a check stand. And I'm standing in the check stand, and that guy shows up with a can of Dr. Pepper standing in my line. I'm
Wow.
not joking when I tell you this. He comes up to the line, up to the deal, buys the can of Coke, looks at me like he's never seen me before in his life, and
Yeah.
walks out the door. You want to talk about stress? I mean, it was
That's
like,
an amazing
are
story.
you kidding me right now? Right? That
Oh,
guy was on Hill Street. I mean, I don't know, I don't know if he had a car or whatever. I don't, no idea. But he was on Hill Street when we arrested him. And, and he got out apparently the next morning.
yeah.
And, right? Anyway, how does he end up in my checkout line at my grocery store
What a crazy coincidence.
Oh, it was
Wow.
nuts. But I'm telling you, he didn't remember me
Yeah.
any more than the man on the moon. I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
right? But he'd had a lot to drink, and I get it, but man, that was quite an experience.
Yeah.
It was
Wow. So
something.
you
So,
decided not to go down that road.
well, I did decide not to go, but man, I was close. My parents found out that I was making an application to go to join Oceanside PD, and they kind of lost it. And
Yeah.
so something about being their oldest son, their only son, right, oldest child, only son, so it worked. They lost their minds, and I acquiesce. So I
Yeah.
often wonder what my life had been like if I had actually joined the Oceanside PD. But anyway, so it was quite an experience. So you're in the jail until, well, actually, it sounds like you were in the jails for 3 years, and then once you're done there, do you then go out on patrol? What did you do next with the sheriff's department?
Yeah. I ended up going to Fallbrook Patrol. So
Okay,
another part of the county I'd never spend any time in, going from
and non-urban,
Costanzo. Yeah. Santee to
right?
Costanzo to Fallbrook.
Yeah, avocado
Um,
capital of the world,
y-
right?
yeah, it's about 340 square mile beat.
Yeah.
Again, awesome time. I was there. This was back when the expectation was that I was going to get pregnant and go light duty and not really be very, so, the patrol, I wasn't going to really support the team, but that was a conversation the lieutenant had with me that when he first met me was, okay, how long do I have you before you're pregnant? And I said, I'm not planning to get pregnant, but I'd like to be a deputy first. But I had incredible training officers. Rocky Laws was my training officer. His real name was Belitha, but he went by Rocky. He passed away from cancer several years ago, but
Hmm.
he was amazing. Former Marine Corps pilot and just a great guy. It was a very small group of people. There were only 12 of us assigned to the station at the time. And we definitely pulled together. We had two of my partners up there, unfortunately, passed away on duty. And so I was a pallbearer twice out of that station. So those were tough experiences to go through as a young deputy. They were very impactful for me. But I had a great time at that station. It was a very supportive environment. Just loved it.
So when those types of things happen, when people that you're working with in a unit like that pass, what does that do to you? What impact does that have on you?
Yeah, so the first one was Teddy Beckman, and he was on his way to a radio call with two other deputies. They were driving down Mission Road, and it was a complete accident. Someone drifted into his lane and hit him head on, and
Mm.
he was killed. And I was working night shift, so I was asleep when it happened, getting ready, getting some rest from the night before. So I got a phone call from my sergeant, and he was a very strong man, and he was crying on the phone and asked me to
Yeah.
come to work and told me what had happened. And of course, I went right in, and we all just really came together when it
Yeah.
happened because it was tough for all of us. And
Yeah.
Teddy had made a lot of close friends in that community and on that team, and so we all just went through it together, navigated it together, which was really helpful. you know, in the back of your mind, that things like that can happen, but when it does, it's
Yeah.
kind of carried with me throughout my career. We still get together every year and celebrate Teddy. So you don't really forget those partners. And then the second individual was someone who was assigned up there with me, Pat Coyle. He went to our Astria program, and Astria, the helicopter crashed and he was killed.
Oh,
So that one was a little tougher. He had a wife and two children, two small children, and but another really good man, and it was tough to lose him as well.
yeah.
But you just pull together. I mean, everyone is going through it together, so it wasn't like I was in it alone. And the community really, there was a lot of outpouring from the community, which made us all feel good.
Yeah, you all have our support, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah,
A lot of us admire you from afar. You know, when my kids were growing up, every time we came across the CHP officer, police officer, sheriff, the sheriff's deputy, I'd have them go up and thank them for keeping us safe.
yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I used to be embarrassed by that. We'd be at coffee and citizens would come up, or they'd have their children come up. And I'm so glad we've gotten away from, because back in the day, they used to come up and say, no, they're going to come arrest you if you're bad. And I always hated that. I want children to come to me when they need help,
Yeah.
not be afraid of me. So I think we've gotten away from that as a society. Now everybody wants, their children to know that police are where you go when you need help.
Yeah. And I think that's a broader conversation about parenting. We talk about parenting a lot on this podcast, which I believe is sacred leadership, right? We started out kind of having a conversation about leadership, and now we're having a conversation about parenting, and we're having a conversation about how you go about doing that, right? What's the best approach? And my feeling in terms of the way that I raised my children and what my opinion is just that it's better to be firm than to not. You don't
Yeah,
want to be a tyrant, but I told my kids, I said, listen, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to be your dad, right?
right.
And my job, as far as God has commanded me to do this, is to prepare you to go out into that big, beautiful world and to be a contribution. I want you to
Right.
leave that world better than the way you found it. That's your mission, right? Now the kids are grown and we're best friends, both of them, right? But there's a time and a place. And I told him, I said, you're not going to agree with everything that your dad decides to do. It's not going to happen. Okay. And by the way, I told them before they became teenagers, I said, when you become a teenager, you're going to come and challenge dad's values. It's part of life. It's the way it works. The only thing I can tell you is you'd better be prepared to bring it and be prepared to lose, because I'm going to stick to my guns and you're not going to win. Okay. And that's what happened. That's the way we did it. Now, I didn't talk at them. I asked them a lot of questions. They got sick, literally sick of questions. But Sheriff, you have to pull it out of them sometimes, right?
Well, and I think that's how we develop critical thinkers, right?
Exactly.
Is
Exactly.
they have to think through, how would I do if you're giving them the answers all the time, they never learn how to solve problems. And no, I completely agree with you. And you have to have standards,
Yeah.
and you have to talk to your kids all the time.
You have to
I
stick to
think,
it, you know?
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, agree.
So just so you know, there are people out here that are trying to keep people out of your jails. Okay. Right? Unbelievable. So going back to Fallbrook. So you were in the Fallbrook unit for how long on patrol?
So I worked patrol in Fallbrook for 4 years.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was one of these people, going back to problem solvers.
Mhm.
I knew that someone was dealing drugs in a house, and I just had to get in there, get a search warrant, and stop that activity, right? So I developed informants, and I worked those cases, and I wrote search warrants, and that was unusual at the time. And I kind of got noticed by the street team.
Mhm.
And at the time, street team meant that you started in the judge unit, which was like a multidisciplinary task force that worked probationers and felons and things like that. So I was didn't really go through a process. I was just selected and picked to go to the judge unit. So I did that for 5 years. And that was really fun. It was during the time when we were the meth capital of the world.
Oh my gosh.
And methamphetamine was being produced and manufactured in San Diego County like nowhere else, and then distributed. And so we busted up a lot of meth labs and did that work. And at a time when we weren't thinking about personal protective gear, right? So, I mean, literally walls would be melting on a house, on the inside of a house where they were manufacturing methamphetamine, and we'd be in jeans and t-shirts digging through everything. So, but it was good work. I felt like we were doing something really meaningful. And then after 5 years there, I was recruited to go work gangs in Vista, which is another, for people who don't know Vista, one of our larger, more urban communities in North County, north part of our San Diego County, and a lot of gang activity at the time, still some gang activity, but not quite as much as we had back in the 90s. So we were doing a lot of gang cases and things like that for about a year. I had a partner that I worked with, and then we coordinated with other stations in the region because there was always rivalries between different gangs, San Marcos, Vista, Encinitas. So we were continually working together with our different partners.
Gotcha. So we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why informants inform. I really want to hear this from you. I have a pretty good idea, but I really want to hear this from you.
Okay.
Literally from the source. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. And we're back with Sheriff Kelly Martinez, and we're a 40-year plus veteran in law enforcement. We're, I think, a few years into the 40 years. We're not nearly there, but you mentioned something a minute ago about developing informants and sort of figuring out ways to bust crack houses and, methamphetamine, manufacturing, drug dealing areas or houses, that kind of thing. Can you talk for a second about why it is you think that informants inform?
Well, there's different reasons, right? There's different motivations. Sometimes they want to take out the competition.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're mercenary. We're paying them for information. Other times they are working off a case. They've been arrested for something and they would like a reduced sentence or some less of a punishment. So to reduce that, they're willing to provide information about what's going on in the area. Sometimes, honestly, it's a spurred lover, a woman or man who's angry with someone who they're no longer in a relationship with. So, whatever motivates any human, those probably can motivate information sharing with the law enforcement.
Is there any part of it that you think is they know that they're doing the right thing?
We do get some citizen informants, or we call them citizen informants, that are living in a neighborhood and they don't like some activity that's occurring, or they would like to help get rid of, that drug house that's down the street, and they have information about time of day activities occurring. They'll let us sit in their home and monitor activity or utilize a space that they have access to so that we can, like a backyard, we can look through their fence and see the marijuana that's growing or whatever it is. So we do have that as well.
So in your career, how much of people knowing that they're doing the wrong thing and trying to correct it do you see? Or have you seen?
Yeah, no, we do. And I think mostly it happens when people are finally at the rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
They're tired of going to jail. They're tired of whatever the lifestyle is. They've finally hit bottom with alcoholism or drug activity. They've experienced something very terrible that it just turns them. Sometimes they see a sibling start to follow in their footsteps, or a child. And so dad goes to prison and his son starts screwing up, stuff like that. So
They start seeing the ramifications of the example that they've been setting.
yeah, back to parenting, right?
Exactly. we keep going back there, right? And I think it's because one of my favorite things I've ever done in my life is being a dad.
Yeah.
I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And just recently I was hired by Southwestern College, not to be a dad, but I was hired by Southwestern College to be an adjunct instructor for real estate.
Oh, good.
And so I have an opportunity to take over a department there in about a year and a half. And what's fascinating to me is I have an opportunity, and I've actually volunteered down there for over a decade. I would go in and speak to their classes and things, and help teach. I love having an impact on this younger generation, even what little bit I can. There's a wise man that once said, if you want to change the world, start in your own little corner of it. And I'm just
Yeah.
crazy enough to think that I can start my own little corner of it. It's part of why we do this podcast, so we can kind of have an impact.
That's awesome. I love that.
So you're in Vista working the gang unit, and you worked there for how long?
I was there for about a year, and then familiar theme with my career, I was asked to go to the next thing. So I was recruited to go to our intelligence unit.
Okay.
Where
What's that?
So we have a unit that we investigate things like, all kinds of things, domestic terrorism, different murder for hire cases. There's just everything unique and strange that doesn't fit into any other pocket goes to our intelligence unit. And I was there for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
that had to have been fascinating.
It was great. I traveled all around the country. It was back when, there was a lot of civil unrest had kind of popped up again, and some criminal activism was occurring around the country around groups like Earth Liberation Front, Animal Liberation Front, where we're doing some criminal activity that we're investigating the domestic terrorism angle of things.
Mhm.
So I traveled the country a little bit doing that work, interfacing with different people working undercover in different states and things like that. And then here locally, we had some white racist groups that were the white supremacy groups that were very active at the time. So we were investigating hate crimes and things that were going on here in the county regionally. So it kept us busy. It was good. And then some murder for hire cases. I assisted with those. I was never lead on those, but those were always interesting, that someone would be motivated to kill someone they're in a relationship with. I always thought divorce is a lot easier.
Yeah. It's the thing I don't get. I don't understand this. I don't understand a spouse taking another spouse's life, right? It's
I
like,
don't either.
just divorce them and move on. I mean,
Yeah,
I just don't get it.
Yeah, I never understood how you could have such hatred for someone
Mm-mm.
that has your children, or I don't know. It's just a strange. But we tried to circumvent those. We would be the undercover person that they were soliciting to murder someone else, and we would stage that situation so they thought it occurred, and they'd make a payment. We'd get those overt acts so that we could arrest someone before any damage had been done.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So what was your favorite thing about that 10-year stint in the intelligence unit?
It was a different kind of police work than I'd been exposed to before, because we were very covert in a lot of ways, sort of in the background, but seeing the criminal activity as it unfolded, and building cases in a different way, or feeding information to working in undercover roles where we could provide that information that would further cases in other parts of our jurisdiction. So.
Wow. So after 10 years in intelligence, where do you go then?
So again, I got that phone call that I needed to promote. So I took the sergeant's
This is
test.
running theme.
Yeah, I've never been one who just jumped at the next opportunity. I loved
Yeah.
where I was at in each position, which I think is a great way to run a career. I think
Yeah.
most people should learn from that. Stop looking forward and just enjoy where you're at.
Yeah. And do the best you can, right?
Yeah, work hard and take care of the people around you and do a good job. Have ethics and integrity. So I did take the sergeant's test, was selected for sergeant, and the first stop as a sergeant was another patrol assignment. So I went to another community in our jurisdiction, San Marcos.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is
That's
right
another
next to
common
Vista.
theme.
And just
Yeah.
south of Fallbrook.
Another common theme, I've worked almost everywhere in our county. So I was there for 1 year as a patrol sergeant, which is awesome. You get to mentor people and be part of everything. I always tell the joke that you get to go to the best calls and then leave because you don't have to write paper anymore or do any of
Right.
that stuff. Did that for about a year, then was recruited back to our intelligence unit as a supervisor. Did that for 2 more years as a sergeant. It's a long career, so I want to kind of speed forward a
Sure,
little
it's
bit.
okay.
After doing the intelligence unit as a sergeant, I was asked to go to our IA, which is our administrative investigations for employee misconduct,
Mhm.
which was very good because I could adjudicate people who are, find the truth. And if someone had done something wrong, then I was able to put forward a good investigation to support discipline. If they were falsely accused, I could also identify that. So did that for a year, was recruited again to promote to lieutenant, which I was promoted out of the IA unit. Went to our dispatch center, which is our watch commander position. We cover the county when other supervisors are not available to do that, answer calls with the press and stuff like that. From there, I went to our North Coastal Command, which it encompasses Encinitas, Del Mar, Solana Beach, and Rancho Santa Fe.
Mhm.
So covered all of those coastal communities, worked the racetrack for the first time, and
Mhm.
the fairgrounds were in charge of, we're contracted to do law enforcement services for them.
Mhm.
In very diverse communities. Rancho Santa Fe is one of our wealthiest communities, as you know. And then we've got the coast and the beach cities, which is phenomenal. From there, I was asked to work at the Valley Center Command, which is actually a lieutenant that's in charge of the Valley Center substation, which is about 412 square miles.
Mhm.
Very large jurisdiction
Very
out in the
large.
middle of farm country. And for those who don't know, we have 18 Indian reservations in San Diego
Mhm.
County, which is the most of any county in the country. And the sheriff is responsible for law enforcement, public safety services on the reservation.
Oh, I
I'd
didn't know that.
never,
Okay.
I'd never worked on a reservation or interfaced with the tribes at all.
Mhm.
It's a very different kind of law enforcement in some ways and very relationship
Mhm.
based. So
They call themselves
really,
nations.
they're sovereign nations,
Yeah.
and so you're navigating that, and as the law enforcement jurisdiction on the reservation, we enforce state law violations, but and a lot of ours are doing some very robust economic development. So they have casinos and they have, thousands and thousands of visitors every day coming
Mhm.
onto the reservation. So dealing with all of those things, fascinating assignment.
Had to have been a
Absolutely loved
balancing
it.
act.
Yeah, and developed some strong relationships out there, not only with the farm community, but with the tribes, and then with our other folks that live out there.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was sent to our narcotic task force, which is a DEA initiative, mid-level narcotic investigation, so cartels and things like that. So kind of back to my roots of investigating narcotics, which I love. So
So is that all of the 40 years? Are we?
no.
So
Yeah, so
how far into there are we?
that is up to 2013, so
Oh,
12
okay.
years to go.
Okay, so
12 more years, so
we're
most of
getting
it.
there. We're getting there.
Yeah, yeah. So
So were
from
you
there,
basically the diplomat in chief when you were working with those reservations?
yeah, so I was the first female assigned as the leader of that station up
Yeah.
there. So that was a little bit different too,
Yeah.
because that community had not had a woman in charge before. And so I remember a few months in, one of the tribal chairs told me, you finally put on your big girl boots. Because I finally just was like, come on. I finally started laying down the law, like, this is what we're doing.
Right.
But I mean, I love the tribes and the reservations. I had the opportunity to work with them again in
Yeah.
future assignments. But so from the narcotic task force, I ended up promoting to captain, which was my end. That was what I was going to retire from. That was my plan. So I went up to the Alpine. They gave me the Alpine Command in all of our rural communities. So Alpine Rural Division, which spans, I want to say 1,600 square miles, another
Mhm.
very large, sparsely populated compared to a lot of the other parts of the county.
Again, it's rural, right? It's not
Yeah.
urban, right? Descanso's out there. It's just before Descanso, right? So
Yeah.
it's a mountainous area that they get snow every once in a while in Alpine. And it can get pretty cold. I mean, it feels like seasons and that kind of thing, kind of a mountain community.
Yeah.
So just for people that aren't familiar with where Alpine is and that kind of thing, San Marcos obviously is pardon me, Rancho Santa Fe obviously is kind of smack in the middle towards the coast of San Diego. And you mentioned Del Mar, or mentioned the racetrack. The Del Mar racetrack is the racetrack you're speaking of, and the Del Mar fairgrounds are there where the racetrack is, and that's where the county fair is every year. The San Diego County Fair comes in, and they were just here. They just left on July 4th. The San Diego County Fair comes in for a couple 3 weeks, I think it is, and they hang out there at the fairgrounds. So you all were in charge of all of that, and that had to have been an interesting jurisdiction in that Rancho Santa Fe, Solana Beach, Del Mar. Some of the most affluent people in the world live there. So that was could be an added complication is all I'm saying. So yeah.
Yeah, the
interesting.
contrast between the diversity of this county is immense. It's
Oh,
4,200 square
unbelievable.
miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like different worlds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating.
It really is. In any one community, you could spend an entire career in. And,
Absolutely.
it's just been a blessing to work all of them. And Alpine, again, tribal communities out there. Most of the rest of our tribes are out there. So that was really a great experience. And I'd already been exposed to somewhat. So I was much better positioned probably to build those relationships.
Yeah. But
great communities in Alpine. And like I said, I was going to retire as a captain. And, but I had this background with our tribes that was appealing to our then Sheriff Gore, who was looking for a tribal liaison.
Mm-hmm.
So, and someone to work directly in his office. And he thought I was perfect. You're going to retire. You'll tell me the truth. You're not worried about your career. And I said, absolutely. Always. I will always tell you the truth. And so I worked in his office, which was a terrific management experience for a year, when he approached me to stay a little longer. So I did. He promoted me again to commander. I oversaw all of our investigative units as a commander. Within 6 short months, he asked me to stay again. And he promoted me to assistant sheriff in charge of our law enforcement services bureau, which is all of the front facing folks that you would see. It's everything from our patrol units to our bomb arson to our helicopter, our air fleet, our dispatch center, all of the things that the public sees on a day-to-day basis. So that was, I loved it. I initiated some great programs while I was there. Our homeless assistance resource team, we started while I was there. We created the marijuana enforcement team and a few other projects that I thought, we needed to redesign some of the way we did things, and it's worked out really well. Enhanced our community facing relationships with the community inclusion director and reshaped some of those things, which were all passions of mine. So from there, the sheriff, I think at that point, really wanted to retire himself, and he was looking for someone to kind of take his position. So he promoted me to undersheriff and then asked me to run for sheriff, which for someone who had planned to retire a few years before, it was it's a little daunting, but
I was out of here.
Yeah, it's done. But it's such an incredible honor. And a sheriff, for people who don't know, is elected similar to a mayor or district attorney and all those positions that are elected, unlike a chief of police who is appointed and works for a mayor and a city council. I work for the 3.3 million residents of San Diego County directly. And I take that responsibility very seriously every day. Yes. And we have, like I said, 4,200 square miles of the county. We have 9 of the 18 cities that we do law enforcement for, the 18 tribal reservations. We have 7 jails, the courthouse security, a number of regional responsibilities. So thankfully, after very difficult, what I felt was a campaign, I was elected in 2022 and took office about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now.
Okay. I know you're going to be shocked. I have questions.
That's all the 40 years.
Okay. So just so you know, I know we're done, right? So just so you know, I was invited to speak at Stanford last month, or not last month, month before last, June.
That's fantastic.
It was awesome, and I had been a guest on a professor's podcast, and he's a professor of public speaking, and he said, "Hey, we have our end of the semester get together dinner thing. Will you come up and be our celebrity guest of honor?" What? Yeah, I'm going to say no, right? So
That's awesome.
at first, the first I'm like, who's the celebrity? Come on. So I'm still the guy that grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, right? It's I just can't, So anyway, so I ended up going up there, arranged for my son and his girlfriend to go, which was very cool. And I get up there and he goes, I said, "So what am I teaching about tonight?" And he goes, "Oh, you're not teaching, you're giving a toast. And you have 2 minutes. And you can't go over your time allotment or it's a mortal sin here." I'm like, it takes me 30 minutes to introduce myself. I mean, come on, man. I mean, you've met me, Sheriff. I'm a little loquacious, right? Anyway, so I get up to give him a tour and I toast and I said, listen, I tried to leave value everywhere I go. I'm gonna give you 2 things. Number 1, if you ever have stage fright, just love the audience that you're talking to more than you love yourself, and your stage fright will go away. Secondly, because it's a public speaking class, right? I'm not joking when I tell you this, Sheriff. Miss Universe Europe was sitting in that. She's in that class.
Wow.
She's in that class. She's getting ready to compete
Wow.
on Miss Universe pageant. It's like, yeah. So this is, interesting deal. Great people, by the way. The students were just amazing, and so were the instructors. So the other thing I told them was, I said, I'm going to suggest to you what I suggested to my children, that they take out a blank document on a word processor, and at the very top, type in "stay in curiosity," and at the bottom, "stay out of judgment." Biggest font you can. And then print it and put it up in front of where you work. Because I'm absolutely convinced that we're not curious enough about each other anymore. We talk at each other, especially our children, and we're not curious about what's going on with them, right?
I agree.
And I believe that
Yeah.
if we got to a place to where we were more curious, and I can't help myself, but if we got to a place where we were more curious, I believe our lives would be richer and our society would be better. That's just my feeling. So I know, hard to imagine. I have questions. So when you, when they approach you about running for sheriff, did you break out in hives? Be honest.
So I was surprised because you have to ask me to do things. I don't. I don't go after
Apparently,
stuff.
we have to
Yeah.
recruit you.
Yeah. And internally there's always discussion. Everyone's watching the current sheriff going, how much longer and
Yeah.
should I run? And so there's people who were kind of jockeying to do
Right.
that. And I knew outside of the organization, there were people who had an interest because you hear the rumors and whatever. So I really didn't know anything about running for office. It was never conceived of in
Never
my
done
head.
that before.
Yeah, I don't have any idea how that works. So I, first conversation was with my husband, and he's a man who loves being the husband of the sheriff. So he was all in from the very beginning. It's been an amazing support. And then my son, who I raised as a single mom, and so he and I had gone on a 5-mile bike ride, and we stopped for lunch, and that's when I asked him, and he thought it was amazing and great and was all in. So next steps was to start talking to people who could actually help me or tell me if I had a chance or is
Right.
there a path forward. So I started having those conversations, started developing a team, and just followed the advice of an amazing consultant, and we did it. But it was hard. It was a
Yeah.
lot. And looking back, I mean, I'm grateful I did it. I think we needed someone in this county who has experience and can navigate difficult environment that we've been in and been through.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
our department, our organization needed that stability.
Mhm.
So I'm really grateful I did it. And I think I did it for all the right reasons, which um, helped. But yeah, it was a little daunting. There were days when I really questioned, because I was acting sheriff, under sheriff, and running for sheriff
Mhm.
for a while.
What in the world am I doing? Right?
It was a lot of work.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So here's a couple of questions for you. What were the top 3 things that you learned about running for office?
I'm really grateful that I had to go through a campaign
Yeah.
because I learned so much more about San Diego and my community than I would have ever learned had I been appointed or gone through some other process. Um, I had to get out and talk to people. I
Mhm.
mean, it was constant, nightly, weekends. I met community members that um, didn't believe I should be the sheriff and was able to have those like you said, be curious.
Mhm.
I always tried to be curious and respectful and not judge. And
Mhm.
I hoped they approached it that way too. There were some people I didn't convince, but
Mhm.
I really think getting out there helped me. And also being elected gave me legitimacy that an appointment or some other process wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Uh, so those were probably the two key things.
Can I ask you this? Being in law enforcement, as long as you've been in law enforcement, you've got to be really good at asking questions. How important do you feel like questions are in terms of human communication, or in terms of being able to connect and build relationships and communicate the way you need to?
Well, I think it's one of the most important things. That's what I tell people as they move up through the ranks. Stop telling people what to do and ask
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Um, and same with our communities. I don't know what's important to people unless I ask.
Right.
And I think that's really key. Having that back and forth. If just one side's talking, the other side's thinking about 10 other things, and you're not
Mhm.
really connecting. I think it's really key to every communication is based on questions.
Well, that's kind of why I'm asking, because it seems like, and again, I'm just telling you what I see, and you may be seeing something different because you deal with a lot more people than I do. I'm seeing that the younger generation thinks that a conversation is I'm talking and then they're thinking about what they're going to say next. That's a debate, Sheriff. That's not a conversation. Okay.
Yeah,
A conversation is they're speaking and I'm listening to them. I might even be taking notes, right? I might even be writing down things that they're saying. And then I'm going to ask them, a lot of times I'm going to ask them about what they just said.
yeah,
We call them piggyback questions, right? But it's a way of active listening. And it's a way of letting people know, number one, that you care, number two, that you're engaged, and that what they're saying to you is important, right? So you would go and do these events, and when you were on your campaign, and you would meet people that didn't want you to be sheriff,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And a lot of times people will confront you with that type of thing just as a test. They want to see how you're going to react. And you
yeah,
know this, you're tested every day, I guarantee it. And you're passing the test because of exactly what you're doing for a living now and what you've done for 40 years, right? The thing is, it's about your reaction, right? It's about, like, one of the things that you mentioned without saying it was you learned a lot about empathy when you started in the jail,
mm,
specifically the female jail, right?
yeah,
When you were in there, you learned a lot about, okay, well, maybe it seems like your perception of the inmate was different and changed pretty dramatically when you started working in that jail.
right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it really humanized
Yeah.
the people who were in custody. And I think that a lot of times people miss that people don't become less human just because they've made a mistake or they're in our jails. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. People have frailties, right? They have
Hmm.
things going on in their lives and a lot of things in their lives that they can't control. We're never going to find those things out, Sheriff, if we don't ask. We have to be able to ask, and we have to be able to ask in a way that's effective, I believe. And so I'm actually writing a book about it. So literally, the power of questions, right? So,
Yeah.
so you've been sheriff now for 2.5 years, right? What's your single most favorite thing about being the sheriff of San Diego County?
Um, the people, really.
Yeah,
The people who work for me, but also our community.
yeah,
I have so many days when I'm just so impressed by our staff and the team and how everybody is just, you know, they're just such great people. There are so many great people in this profession, but also in our communities
yeah,
that, we work to, and we can't do our jobs without our community. We need
yeah.
to. That's a partnership, and it's always a back and forth. And the way that the deputies are embracing that I think is different than when I came in. We used to just drive our patrol car, go to the calls, arrest people, whatever. Um, Now they're an active part of the community, and they're
Mhm.
trying very hard to show up to be there as a community member, not just the law enforcement entity that protects that community.
You mentioned the community and you mentioned how important the community is to law enforcement. I think it's really important to just how we operate as a society, right?
Yeah.
But in particular, there was something that happened recently that really stuck out to me. And it didn't happen here. It was in Texas of all places. But there was a video of it was a Ring camera video, and I bet you guys like those.
A little bit.
Just a little, right? Like, are you kidding me right now? Right? I didn't know we could watch them do that. But this girl runs away. You probably heard about this. She runs away from this trailer and she's running down the street. And this guy goes down and picks her up off the ground and carries her kicking and screaming back to the trailer. One of the
Yeah.
neighbors happened to see this happen and they called 911 and they found out that she was being human trafficked,
Yeah.
right? Which is something I know you're familiar with. The thing about it is, how important is it for a citizen if they see something to say something?
It's incredibly important. I mean, a deputy or a law enforcement officer is never going to catch everything that's happening in a
Yeah.
community. We're not gonna see it. Our community is, and I say this about our immigrant communities, even though there's a fear of some federal agencies right now in our immigrant communities, local law enforcement are never going to ask your immigration status. We need you if you're a victim or a witness of a crime to call us. We're the ones who are going to answer 911 and come help you.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly important. We can't solve crime. We can't save victims. We can't protect people if people aren't talking to us.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to say something, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, is there anything that you're currently working on initiative wise? Anything that you'd like to cover that we want to promote here?
Yeah, we have a number of youth initiatives right now that are fairly new, and then our Spanish Academy that people might not be familiar with. We move it around the county. It most recently was in Ramona. We have about a 60 to 100 um, folks come. It's in Spanish only. It's Wednesdays for 6 nights or 6 weeks in a row. We talk about everything from drug awareness, gang awareness. A lot of parents don't really know what to look for to help that with their children. The Office of Ed is there. The Mexican consulate comes out. We spend a lot of times demystifying who we are as a sheriff's office, so that the immigrant community understands that we're here to protect them. We have the Respect Project, which is a program we started in San Marcos again about 12 years ago. It's actually a standalone building where we get referrals for. It started out young men, now it's young men and women, high school age, for about a year. It's a mentoring program for those kids to come and help keep them away from gangs and drugs and help them get their lives on track. Really passionate deputies that participate in that program, as well as a psychiatrist who's there. We have a food pantry for kids who don't have enough food at home, a place where they can get clothing, a bunch of other help. And then we just started with the Rise Above program, which is the generation before that, 10-year-olds to that age. And we know that those kids oftentimes are being recruited to gangs and seeing things happen. So really trying to do more for the youth in our communities.
Mhm.
And we're going to expand the Respect Project down to Lemon Grove, we hope. We're working with the city to start a program down there.
So, you mentioned it, so I'm going to ask, which I'm a real pain in the tuchus, I know. I'm going to ask anyway. So you mentioned, I think you said Rise Above. Is that what you called it?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it starts at 10 years old,
hmm
10 to,
I think they're 10 to 13
okay.
ish, and their parents come. So we start as a group, and it's again several weeks in a row in the evenings. We provide the meals and things like that, and the kids go off with the deputies and play games and do all that kind of stuff, while the parents get some time where they learn about kind of trouble signs, what to look out for with their kids, and how to help teach their kids and that kind of stuff. It's patterned after Star Pal, if you're familiar
Yeah.
with that program. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that program, what you're doing is trying to equip the parents with the tools that they need to be able to sort of recognize who the friend is that might lead them astray, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
This really comes down, and I'm going to have, I need to not say this. I need to ask this. Do you feel like this comes down to, and again, I'm talking about gang involvement, that kind of thing, sort of going the wrong way, right? Do you think what do you think is the biggest motivating factor for a 10-year-old to be looking at taking that wrong path?
They either see it somewhere in their family or their friends, or they're recruited, frankly. The gangs actively recruit younger members because not only, they need to, replenish their group, I guess, so to speak, or they are looking for younger kids because they're not going to be suspected of running the drugs or carrying the gun or those types of things. So unfortunately, and it's an attractive lifestyle really when you're a kid home alone, parents are working two jobs, and you want to run around with the other kids and you want to be part of the group. I mean, there's a lot of things that sort of um, entice younger kids to get involved in that activity. So we're trying to empower the young kids before they get involved, as well as give the parents the tools to recognize, uh, and also someone to call. The deputies that participate in this program, the kids continue to contact them well past the program. They give out their phone number, and they're a mentor for more than just that session.
Do you ever have people from the community come in and speak that maybe have a background with gangs and that kind of thing, where they come in and talk to the parents and to the students or to the
We
children?
do. We do. We've got a couple, we call them folks with lived experience.
Hmm.
And, we do have a couple of people that do that, and they've kind of turned that around. I think that's a very effective way to reach the kids.
And the
So
reason
it's
I'm
fairly,
reason I'm asking is I interviewed a gentleman who I actually work with. I have
oh,
done business with him, and young guy, 26, and we get people's life stories as we have with yours. And I sat with him, and every single person in his family, his mother, his father, his uncles, aunts, his grandparents, were all active gang
mm,
members.
yeah,
Grew up in City Heights, which is a suburb of San Diego that's kind of known for some rough areas and some crime issues. Um, and this kid grew up literally in like gangland area and was able to extract himself from that. And one of his uncles became a sheriff's deputy
mm,
of all things, right? And he helped to lead him out of this lifestyle, out of this what he was basically heading into, right? Um, and this kid today is literally has 3 letters of recommendation for admission to Harvard Law.
wow, that's fantastic.
He graduated at UCSD number 4 or number 6, pardon me, number 4 in his class. I mean, the kid is just impressive as all get out. And he's somebody that I would love to see do that type of thing where he comes in and does some guest speaking, and because I know
Yeah,
for a fact it would be good for him.
yeah. Please connect him with Dave Collins,
Yeah.
and we can connect him with both of those programs.
It blew me
The
away,
other,
Sheriff. I had no idea what I was walking into. And I mean, I kind of
wow,
sat there just dumbfounded. My jaw doesn't hit the floor very often.
yeah.
But it literally, I mean, I walked out of there going, really? Right?
Well, and the other
Unbelievable.
thing too is part of what you're talking about too is exposing these kids to things they would never be exposed to.
Yeah.
So we take them, to go learn how to sail, or we take
Yeah.
them to the Padres, or experiences that they are not going to have during their normal course because the family just isn't built that way, right?
Yeah.
So I think the more exposure kids have to what could be, and I think this is right up that lines with that really well.
Yeah. This is a real thing for me. You can tell, right? I had a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, who's now my business partner, last year came to me and said, look, we've got this kid whose dad just
Mm,
died and he's going off the rails. And all of us, he's his godfather. He said, all of us are trying to connect with him and none of us can.
yeah.
And he said, would you come to dinner with us and see if you can connect with him? And I
Wow.
did. And I
Wow.
sat with this young man, he's 14 years old, and he was so angry and so just lost. I mean, lost, Sheriff. And I sat with him, and all I did was just ask him questions. And at one point, he turned to me and he said, "Do you know that nobody in my life has ever asked me anything? They've always just told me what to do, told me where to go, told me how to act, right? Nobody's ever asked me about me and what I want." He goes, "You're the only person." But here's the thing. He shared with me what he wanted because I asked him, right? And I cared enough to continue to ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want people to understand that you can have an impact. You don't have to be a San Diego County sheriff. You don't have to be, right? You can have an impact in your community if you just care enough to ask. Just sit with a young person and let them tell you, ask them, let them tell you what's going on.
Well, and a lot of times, like to your point, they're being told what to do, not only by their parents, but social media, everything is, and they have to present an image of,
Exactly.
Which is so difficult. And there's so much pressure, I think, on young people right now, or, to be successful, you have to be busy to be successful, which makes, so they're spinning and trying to do all these millions of things. And yeah, I agree.
So I'm the voice of my children's alma mater, their high school football team.
Oh,
And so
good.
I'm the guy up in the press box during the home games that has the
Oh,
microphone that does the play-by-play. I'm the obnoxious one. I know you I know. It's hard to imagine, huh? So I interviewed the coach for the podcast. We got his life story, an unbelievable life story. And he said to me, the turning point for him was when he stopped focusing on winning CIF championships and he started focusing on the players.
yeah.
And so now when the players come in that oftentimes are disadvantaged and in a rough area and parents are having a tough time financially and that kind of thing, and they're late to practice, they don't make them run laps first. They sit with them and ask them, what happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they end up running laps because they have to maintain a standard, right?
But that's powerful.
Yeah, they ask them first.
Yeah. And I think, that's, yeah. And I think what really drives me is just loving the people.
Yeah.
And it's right to the point. You're saying you have to be interested. You have to show that interest.
You have to care enough.
And it really, people will do anything
Yeah.
for someone they think cares about them.
And that's precisely my point. These 10-year-olds that you're having an impact on, they will do anything in the world for somebody that they think cares about them. And that's how they end up going down that rabbit hole, right? They end up going the wrong way because they're looking for that validation. They're looking for that person who they think cares. And these organizations are good, man. They are really good at recruiting. It's one of their strengths. And I'm talking about organizations in terms of gangs and all that kind of thing, right?
Cartel, all of it. Yeah.
Our competition, so to speak, right? To keep them out of the dark side, so to speak. So
Right.
I'm really, really glad you're doing that. And I did warn you this before we hit record. I wanted to acknowledge you while we're on the air and just tell you how much I admire you. 40 years in law enforcement. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And what you do for us, keeping us safe, is a big deal. And I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Mike. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.